In the sprawling Roman Empire of the 2nd century AD, where aqueducts carried fresh water across hundreds of miles and roads connected 3 continents, the most dangerous journey a person could take was the first one, from womb to world. While Roman engineering marvels still inspire awe today, Roman medicine remained a primitive blend of superstition, inherited wisdom, and emerging scientific knowledge that would horrify modern practitioners. As an obstetrix to a professional midwife, you occupy a unique position in Roman society. Unlike most women, you possess both practical skills and legal recognition. Your knowledge can mean the difference between life and death for both mother and child. The Roman state itself depends on your expertise. With high infant mortality rates and frequent deaths in childbirth, the empire's population growth relies on skilled midwives who can improve survival odds even marginally. Your profession bridges the worlds of rich and poor, slave and free, sacred and secular. In patrician villas, you work alongside household physicians and benefit from luxury resources. In cramped insulae tenements, you might be the only medical professional present. Regardless of social class, every Roman woman faces the same biological realities: labour pain, bleeding, infection risk, and the ever-present spectre of death. Roman law and custom add another layer of complexity. Fathers hold absolute power over newborn acceptance through the ritual of tollere liberos. Even after a successful delivery, your work isn't complete until the paterfamilias decides whether to rear or expose the infant. This legal framework makes every birth a social drama as much as a medical event. The tools of your trade, bronze hooks, birthing stools, herbal preparations, and olive oil, represent centuries of accumulated wisdom passed down through generations of women. You've learned from Greek medical texts, Egyptian techniques, and local folklore, creating a personalized approach to obstetrics that adapts to each unique situation. But let's not romanticize the reality. Today, as you prepare for another day of deliveries, you know that some of the mothers you help will die. Some babies won't survive. Some fathers will reject healthy infants for reasons you can't control. This is the harsh arithmetic of ancient childbirth. Even your considerable skill can't overcome the fundamental limitations of pre-modern medicine. Today's story begins before dawn in your modest home near Rome's Subura district, where the desperate knock of a household slave is about to launch you into 24 hours that will test every technique you've mastered, every judgment you've learned to make, and every emotional barrier you've built to survive in a profession where life and death hang in constant balance. The pounding on your wooden door tears you from dreams filled with screaming women and blood-soaked linens, occupational hazards that follow you even into sleep. Outside, Rome is still dark, though the eastern sky shows the first pale hints of dawn. The knocking comes again, urgent and desperate, the kind that means someone's life hangs in the balance. You roll off your simple straw mattress, your joints protesting. At 43, you've delivered more babies than you can count, and your body bears the physical toll of countless nights spent crouched over labouring women. Your hands, permanently stained by blood and herbal preparations, reach automatically for the leather satchel that never leaves your bedside, your obstetrics bag, packed with the tools that define your profession. Domina, please, my mistress needs you. The voice belongs to a young slave girl, probably no more than 14, her tunic torn from running through Rome's dangerous pre-dawn streets. Her chest heaves as she struggles for breath, and you can see terror in her eyes. First births often sent household slaves into panic, especially when complications arose. You throw a wool cloak over your sleeping tunic and grab your bag. Inside are the instruments that separate you from the neighborhood women who assist at births out of kindness rather than skill. Bronze birthing hooks for repositioning difficult babies, small sharp knives for cutting umbilical cords, iron forceps passed down from your mentor, and a collection of bronze speculums for examination. Alongside these are carefully prepared herbal mixtures, silphium from North Africa to prevent excessive bleeding, pennyroyal to strengthen contractions, and willow bark for pain relief. How long has your mistress been in labour? You ask, as you follow the slave through narrow streets where waste from upper-floor apartments might fall at any moment. The Subura never sleeps completely. Prostitutes still conduct business in doorways, night soil collectors make their rounds, and early merchants prepare for dawn markets. The smell is overwhelming. Human waste, rotting food, unwashed bodies, and the acrid smoke from countless oil lamps and cooking fires. Since yesterday evening, Domina, the pain started after dinner, but they've grown much worse. She's been pushing for hours, but nothing happens. The baby won't come. The slave girl's voice breaks with exhaustion and fear. In wealthy households, a difficult birth wasn't just a medical crisis. It was a potential family catastrophe that could affect inheritance, political alliances, and social standing. As you hurry through the maze of streets leading to the better neighborhoods, your mind runs through possibilities. A baby presenting incorrectly, breech, sideways, or face first instead of crown first. An unusually large infant that can't pass through the birth canal. A mother whose pelvis is too narrow, perhaps deformed by childhood malnutrition. Internal bleeding. Premature separation of the placenta. Each scenario requires different techniques, different tools, different risks. You've learned to read the signs that separate normal difficulties from genuine emergencies. The length of labour matters less than its progression. Some women labour for days with their first child, then deliver easily. Others seem to progress normally until suddenly everything goes wrong. Your reputation depends on making these judgments correctly, arrive too early, and you waste time that could be spent with genuinely needy patients. Arrive too late, and you might find a dead mother, dead baby, or both. The slave leads you through increasingly affluent neighborhoods, where villa walls grow higher and the streets cleaner. Oil lamps burn in more windows, casting flickering light on painted frescoes and marble decorations. Here, the smells change from human waste and poverty to frankincense, cooking spices, and the rosewater that wealthy Romans use to mask less pleasant odors. Tell me about your mistress, you instruct as you walk. How old is she? How many children has she borne? These details help you prepare mentally for what awaits. A young woman with her first child faces different risks than an older mother who's delivered multiple times. Previous difficult births, stillbirths, or maternal health problems all influence your approach. She's 18, Domina. This is her first baby. She married my master 2 years ago, but lost 2 babies early in pregnancy before this one. The information makes you frown. Repeated early pregnancy losses sometimes indicate problems that complicate full-term deliveries. The mother's pelvis might be malformed, or she might have internal scarring from previous trauma. At 18, she should be physically strong enough for childbirth, but her reproductive history suggests potential complications. As you approach the villa, you mentally prepare for the scene awaiting you. Wealthy Roman births follow established protocols that can either help or hinder your work. The birthing room will be prepared according to tradition, windows covered to prevent evil spirits from entering, lamps and incense burning to purify the air, and female relatives gathered to provide emotional support and witness the delivery. These customs create a supportive environment, but can also crowd the space and interfere with medical procedures. Your bag bounces against your hip as you quicken your pace, the bronze instruments inside clinking softly. Each tool represents years of training, beginning with your apprenticeship to an older midwife who taught you to distinguish normal from abnormal, safe from dangerous, hopeful from hopeless. Roman midwifery combines Greek medical theory, Egyptian practical knowledge, local folklore, and personal experience gained through countless births, where you've seen everything that can go right or wrong when bringing life into the world. The villa's doorkeeper recognizes your profession immediately and admits you without question. Time is the enemy now. Every minute that passes increases risks for both mother and child. The villa's atrium takes your breath away, even after years of attending births in Rome's finest homes. Marble columns support a painted ceiling depicting Diana, goddess of the hunt and childbirth, surrounded by woodland scenes that seem to move in the flickering lamplight. A rectangular pool reflects the flames, creating dancing patterns on mosaic floors that probably cost more than most Romans earn in a lifetime. But you have no time for aesthetic appreciation. Female voices drift from the back of the house, some crying, others offering encouragement, all tinged with the hysteria that accompanies difficult births. A middle-aged woman approaches quickly, her stola marked with blood and her hair dishevelled from hours of crisis management. "Thank the gods you've come," she says, grasping your hands. "I am Claudia Maxima, mother of the labouring woman. My daughter Livia has been in agony since sunset yesterday. Our household physician examined her hours ago, but said this was women's work and left us to manage alone." Her voice carries the frustration common among wealthy families who expect their expensive doctors to solve every problem. You nod, unsurprised. Roman physicians, trained in Greek theoretical medicine, often avoided the messy realities of childbirth. They preferred diagnosing humoral imbalances and prescribing herbal remedies to the hands-on work of obstetrics. This created opportunities for skilled midwives, but also meant you often inherited cases after crucial time had been lost. "Has her water broken?" you ask, as Claudia leads you through corridors decorated with frescoes showing mythological birth scenes. Leto delivering Apollo and Artemis, Venus emerging from sea foam, Rhea hiding newborn Jupiter from Saturn's cannibalistic hunger. The artistic choices reveal Roman anxieties about childbirth dangers and divine intervention needs. Yes, hours ago. The fluid was clear at first, but recently it's been tinged with blood and something green. Claudia's description makes your stomach tighten. Green-tinged amniotic fluid often indicates fetal distress, the baby releasing meconium in utero, suggesting oxygen deprivation. Combined with prolonged labour and bleeding, this points to serious complications requiring immediate intervention. You enter the birthing chamber to find controlled chaos. 6 women surround a birthing stool where Livia sits, gripping the carved handles so tightly her knuckles are white. Sweat streams down her face despite the cool morning air, and her breathing comes in sharp gasps between contractions. The room smells of frankincense, rose oil, blood, and the unmistakable odour of prolonged labour. "Livia," you say calmly, setting your bag on a marble table covered with clean linens. "I'm here to help you and your baby. Can you tell me how you're feeling?" Your voice carries the authority of experience. Dozens of women have trusted you with their lives and their children's lives. And your confident manner alone often provides psychological relief. "It hurts so much," she gasps. "The baby feels stuck. Every time I push, nothing happens. I'm so tired." Her exhaustion is obvious, muscles trembling from prolonged exertion, voice hoarse from hours of crying out, eyes unfocused with pain and fatigue. First-time mothers often underestimate the physical demands of labour, but Livia's ordeal has clearly exceeded normal parameters. You wash your hands in a basin of warm water scented with wine, not for antiseptic purposes, since germ theory won't be discovered for another 17 centuries, but following Greek medical recommendations for cleanliness. Your examination must be both thorough and discreet, respecting Roman modesty taboos while gathering essential information about the baby's position and the mother's condition. I need to examine you internally, you explain, to understand how your baby is positioned. Livia nods weakly, too exhausted to protest. Roman women expected internal examinations during difficult births, though they were performed with careful attention to preserving dignity through draped linens and minimal exposure. Your experienced fingers immediately detect the problem. The baby is presenting face first instead of crown first, a dangerous position that makes vaginal delivery extremely difficult. The infant's face is wedged against the mother's pelvic bone, explaining why hours of pushing have produced no progress. Additionally, the cervix shows signs of swelling and tearing from prolonged pressure, increasing bleeding risks. The baby is facing upward instead of downward, you explain to the anxious women surrounding the birthing stool. This makes delivery much more difficult, but not impossible. I'm going to try to turn the baby to a better position. You don't mention that face presentations carry high mortality rates for both mother and infant, or that your next decisions could determine whether this household celebrates a successful birth or mourns a double tragedy. From your bag, you withdraw a small bronze hook, one of your most important tools, designed for repositioning malpositioned babies. The instrument looks fearsome to uninitiated observers, but in skilled hands it can save lives that would otherwise be lost. You also prepare strips of clean linen, olive oil for lubrication, and a bronze speculum that will help you see internal structures more clearly. Livia, I need you to lie back on the bed for this procedure, you instruct. Your female relatives will support you, and I'll work as quickly as possible. The birthing stool, perfect for normal deliveries, won't provide adequate access for the complex manipulations required to reposition a face-presenting infant. As the women help Livia move to a low bed covered with expensive silk cushions, you notice details that speak to this household's wealth and anxiety. Gold amulets depicting Juno Lucina, goddess of childbirth, hang around Livia's neck. Expensive unguents fill bronze containers intended to ease the baby's passage. Fresh flowers from the villa's private garden provide pleasant scents to counteract birth odours. Most tellingly, a small altar in the corner holds offerings to multiple deities, Roman, Greek, and Egyptian goddesses, all invoked to ensure safe delivery. The room's luxury contrasts sharply with the primitive state of Roman obstetrics. Despite access to the best medical knowledge available in the ancient world, despite wealth that can purchase any treatment or comfort, Livia faces the same fundamental risks as the poorest slave woman. Your skills, developed through apprenticeship and experience, rather than formal medical education, represent her best hope for survival. You light additional oil lamps to improve visibility and arrange your instruments within easy reach. The bronze hook gleams in the flickering light, ready to perform delicate work that could save 2 lives or destroy them both with a single wrong movement. The bronze hook feels familiar in your hands, its curved end polished smooth by years of use, its weight perfectly balanced for the delicate work of repositioning unborn children. Your mentor, an elderly Greek woman who learned her craft in Alexandria, taught you that this instrument could be either salvation or destruction, depending on the skill wielding it. Hold the lamp steady. You instruct the attending women as you prepare for the most dangerous part of your profession. Internal manipulation of a baby during birth requires precise anatomical knowledge, steady nerves, and the acceptance that despite your best efforts, some cases cannot be saved. Roman midwives learned through apprenticeship and experience rather than formal medical training, building expertise through years of observing what worked and what failed tragically. Livia lies on silk cushions, her legs supported by female relatives who murmur encouraging prayers to Juno Lucina. Her breathing has become more laboured, and you notice a greyish pallor that suggests internal bleeding or exhaustion approaching dangerous levels. Time is running short. Prolonged, obstructed labour can kill both mother and child through exhaustion, infection, or hemorrhage. You apply olive oil liberally to your hands and the bronze hook. Roman medical texts recommend various oils for obstetric procedures. Olive oil for its lubricating properties, rose oil for pleasant scent, even exotic preparations imported from Egypt or India for wealthy patients. The oil serves practical purposes, reducing friction during internal procedures and providing some protection against the rough bronze instruments that are your primary tools. I'm going to try to hook the baby's jaw and guide the head into a better position, you explained to Livia and her female relatives. You'll feel pressure and some pain, but try to remain as still as possible. Your voice carries calm authority, developed through years of managing birth crises, but internally you're calculating risks with each movement. The bronze hook slides into place, and you feel for the baby's facial features with practiced fingers. Face presentations require extraordinary delicacy. Too much pressure can fracture the infant's skull. Too little fails to achieve the necessary repositioning. Your fingertips map the tiny nose, the closed eyes, the mouth that should be breathing air within hours if your technique succeeds. Ancient Roman obstetrics relied heavily on manual dexterity and spatial reasoning. Without X-rays, ultrasounds, or even accurate anatomical drawings, midwives learned to see with their hands, interpreting the three-dimensional puzzle of baby, pelvis, and birth canal through touch alone. This skill took years to develop and could never be completely reliable. Every birth presented unique challenges requiring improvised solutions. You begin the careful process of applying gentle traction to encourage the baby's head to flex and rotate. The bronze hook must provide guidance without causing injury, supporting the natural forces of labour while correcting the abnormal presentation. Livia groans with each adjustment, gripping her mother's hands so tightly that both women's knuckles turn white. "I can feel movement," you announce, and indeed, the baby seems to be responding to your manipulation. The head rotates slightly, bringing the face away from direct contact with the pelvic bone, but the process is slow and dangerous. One wrong move could convert a difficult but potentially successful delivery into a catastrophic emergency, requiring crude surgical intervention. Roman surgical techniques for obstructed labour were primitive and usually fatal. Embryotomy, the surgical removal of a dead or dying baby, involved sharp instruments that almost always killed the mother through blood loss or infection. As a skilled midwife, your reputation depended on avoiding such desperate measures through superior technique and judgment. The baby's position continues to improve under your careful guidance. What began as a face presentation is gradually becoming a more manageable vertex presentation, with the crown of the head leading the way as nature intended. But the process has taken nearly an hour, during which Livia has grown progressively weaker and the risk of complications has increased steadily. "One more adjustment," you murmur, repositioning the bronze hook for what you hope will be the final manipulation. Roman medical theory, inherited from Greek physicians like Hippocrates and Galen, emphasized the importance of working with natural forces rather than against them. Your goal isn't to force the baby into an unnatural position, but to remove the obstacles preventing normal delivery mechanisms from completing their work. With a sensation you've learned to recognize after years of practice, you feel the baby's head engage properly in the birth canal. The face, no longer pressed against bone, can complete its natural rotation. The shoulders, previously trapped by the abnormal head position, have room to navigate the pelvic outlet. For the first time since arriving at this villa, you allow yourself to believe that both mother and child might survive this ordeal. The baby is in a much better position now, you announce to the anxious women surrounding the bed. We can return to the birthing stool and allow natural labour to complete the delivery. The relief in the room is palpable. Female relatives embrace each other. Someone whispers thanks to various goddesses, and even Livia manages a weak smile despite her exhaustion. But your work is far from finished. Repositioning the baby was only the first challenge. Ensuring safe delivery of both child and placenta, managing post-birth bleeding, and navigating the social rituals that determine the infant's fate all lie ahead. Roman childbirth was a marathon, not a sprint, requiring sustained skill and judgment over many hours. You clean the bronze hook carefully and return it to your leather bag, but keep other instruments readily available. Experience has taught you that obstetric emergencies can develop rapidly even after seemingly successful interventions. The baby's improved position increases survival odds significantly, but doesn't guarantee the happy ending that everyone in this room desperately wants. As you help Livia return to the birthing stool, you notice that dawn light is beginning to penetrate the covered windows. Rome is waking up, slaves kindling cooking fires, merchants preparing for market, the great machinery of empire beginning another day. But in this birthing chamber, time moves differently, measured not by sundials or water clocks, but by the rhythm of contractions and the gradual emergence of new life. The birthing stool dominates the center of the room like an ancient throne designed for the most fundamental human experience. Carved from dense oak and polished smooth by generations of labouring women, it represents thousands of years of accumulated wisdom about positioning, gravity, and the biomechanics of birth. Your fingers trace the familiar grooves, worn by countless hands gripping during the final stages of labour. Roman birthing stools varied depending on social class and regional traditions, but all shared basic design principles that modern obstetricians would recognise as mechanically sound. This particular example, befitting a wealthy household, features intricate carvings depicting protective goddesses, bronze fittings at stress points, and carefully angled supports that allow optimal pelvic positioning while providing comfort during prolonged labour. Livia, we're going to help you back onto the stool now that your baby is positioned correctly, you explain, gesturing for the attending women to support her weight during the transfer. After an hour lying flat for the repositioning procedure, returning to an upright posture will allow gravity to assist the natural forces of labour, a principle understood by ancient midwives long before medical science could explain the physics involved. The stool's design reflects centuries of practical experimentation. The horseshoe-shaped seat provides access for the midwife's hands while supporting the mother's weight. The backrest allows her to lean into contractions while maintaining the forward-tilted pelvis that opens the birth canal most effectively. Armrests, carved with protective symbols, give her something to grip during the intense physical effort of pushing. As Livia settles onto the familiar seat, you position yourself on a low stool directly in front of her. This arrangement, midwife below, mother above, appears in Roman art, Greek medical texts, and archaeological evidence throughout the ancient Mediterranean. The positioning allows you to monitor the baby's progress, provide perineal support to prevent tearing, and intervene quickly if complications develop. Feel how much easier it is to breathe in this position, you note, and indeed Livia's respiratory distress improves immediately. The upright posture prevents the baby's weight from compressing major blood vessels, improving oxygen flow to both mother and child. Ancient midwives discovered this principle through observation and experience, developing techniques that modern medicine has validated with scientific understanding. Roman birthing chambers typically included multiple stools of different heights and configurations, allowing midwives to select the most appropriate option for each woman's anatomy and the specific challenges of her labour. Some featured adjustable components, removable seats for easier cleaning, or special attachments for managing breech deliveries or twins. The wealthy could afford custom-made stools designed for their specific physical requirements. You examine your patient's progress with growing optimism. The baby's head is now visible, crowned with dark hair that glistens in the lamplight. Each contraction brings more of the infant into view. First the forehead, then the eyes and nose, gradually revealing the face of Rome's newest citizen. The improved positioning, achieved through your earlier manipulation, has transformed what seemed like an impossible delivery into a manageable, if still challenging, birth. "I can see your baby," you announce, and the room fills with excited whispers. Roman tradition held that the first glimpse of the emerging infant was a moment of great spiritual significance, marking the transition from potential life to actual personhood. The attending women lean forward to witness this miracle, their earlier anxiety replaced by anticipation and joy. But your professional focus remains on the medical realities of delivery. The baby's head is large, requiring careful management to prevent maternal tearing. The umbilical cord must be checked for problematic positioning around the neck. The shoulders, often the most challenging part of delivery, still need to navigate the birth canal safely. Each phase of birth presents unique risks, requiring specific techniques and continuous vigilance. You place your hands in position to support the baby's emerging head, using gentle counterpressure to control the speed of delivery. Too rapid emergence can cause severe perineal tears that heal poorly and create long-term complications. Too slow can result in cord compression and infant brain damage. The timing requires precise judgment developed through years of experience with hundreds of births. With the next contraction, "I want you to push gently," you instruct Livia. "Don't hold your breath. Let the air flow naturally while your body does its work." Roman midwives had learned that the common instinct to hold breath during pushing actually worked against the natural mechanics of labour. Proper breathing techniques, passed down through generations of women, could significantly improve delivery outcomes. The birthing stool's design allows you to observe Livia's entire body during contractions, watching for signs of distress, exhaustion, or complications. Her colour remains good despite the prolonged labour, suggesting that your earlier intervention prevented the cascade of problems that could have led to maternal or fetal death. The improved fetal positioning has allowed normal physiological processes to resume their course. Ancient Roman obstetrics relied heavily on pattern recognition. Experienced midwives learned to identify the subtle signs that distinguished normal from abnormal labour progress. The rhythm of contractions, changes in the mother's breathing or skin colour, variations in fetal movement patterns, and countless other indicators helped skilled practitioners make crucial decisions about when to intervene and when to allow nature to proceed unassisted. As the baby's head crowns fully, you check carefully for neutral cord to the umbilical cord wrapped around the neck, a potentially dangerous complication that requires immediate attention. Your fingers slip between the infant's neck and the birth canal, feeling for the telltale pulse and texture of the cord. Finding none, you breathe a silent prayer of thanks to whatever gods might be listening. The room falls silent except for Livia's breathing and the soft crackle of oil lamps. This moment, balanced between successful delivery and potential disaster, represents the culmination of everything you've learned about the ancient art of bringing life safely into the world. In seconds, you'll hold a new Roman citizen or confront another tragedy in a profession where death remains a constant companion despite all your skill and experience. The baby's shoulders rotate with a sensation you've learned to recognize. That subtle shift indicating successful navigation of the pelvic outlet. After hours of struggle, the moment of actual birth arrives with surprising swiftness. One final push from Livia, one last surge of uterine power, and suddenly your hands cradle a slippery, warm, perfect human being fresh from the mysterious realm of the womb. The infant, a boy, you note immediately, takes his first breath with a sharp cry that fills the birthing chamber with sound more precious than any music. His skin, mottled purple and white from the birth process, begins to pink up as his lungs expand and his circulation adapts to independent life. His tiny fists wave in the air, already grasping for something to hold in a world suddenly cold and bright compared to his watery sanctuary. "A son!" you announce, and the room explodes in celebration. Roman families valued male children highly for inheritance, family name continuation, and political advantages, though the infant's ultimate fate still depends on his father's acceptance. For now, though, the women surrounding the birthing stool weep with joy and relief, embracing each other in the universal human response to successful childbirth. You work quickly to clear the baby's airways of mucus and amniotic fluid, using techniques passed down through generations of midwives. A clean linen cloth wrapped around your finger allows you to sweep the tiny mouth and nose clear of obstructions. The strong cry indicates healthy lung function, but you check carefully for any obvious birth defects that might influence the father's decision about whether to rear this child. Livia collapses back against the birthing stool, exhausted but smiling through tears of relief and joy. The ordeal that began yesterday evening has finally ended successfully, though your work continues. The placenta must be delivered safely, bleeding must be controlled, and the complex social rituals surrounding Roman birth must be properly observed to ensure this child's acceptance into the family. Roman medical knowledge about the immediate postpartum period was surprisingly sophisticated. Midwives understood that the placenta must be delivered completely to prevent hemorrhage and infection. They knew that excessive bleeding required immediate intervention. They recognized signs of maternal distress that could indicate life-threatening complications even after successful infant delivery. The umbilical cord still connects mother and child, pulsing with blood that continues to flow between them. You wait for the pulsation to cease naturally, an indication that the placental circulation has stopped and the cord can be safely cut. This practice, developed through observation and experience, maximized the infant's blood volume and reduced the risk of anemia in the crucial first weeks of life. While waiting for cord pulsation to stop, you examine the baby more thoroughly. His reflexes appear normal. He grasps your finger strongly, turns his head towards sounds, and moves all limbs symmetrically. His breathing has settled into a regular rhythm, and his colour continues to improve as his circulation establishes its new pattern. Most importantly, from a social perspective, you see no obvious defects that might cause his father to reject him. Roman attitudes toward infant defects reflected both practical considerations and religious beliefs. Severely disabled children were often exposed, abandoned, because families couldn't provide adequate care, and because defects were sometimes interpreted as divine displeasure. As a midwife, you learn to make quick assessments that could influence family decisions about an infant's fate, though the final choice always rested with the paterfamilias. The cord pulsation finally ceases, and you tie it off with clean linen strips before cutting it with a sharp bronze knife. The separation marks the infant's first moment of true independence. No longer dependent on his mother's blood and oxygen, he must now survive entirely through his own physiological efforts. This transition, managed successfully billions of times throughout human history, still seems miraculous every time you witness it. "He's beautiful," Livia whispers, reaching for her son with trembling hands. You place the infant on her chest, skin-to-skin contact that provides warmth, comfort, and the beginning of the bonding process that will sustain their relationship through the years ahead. Roman culture emphasized maternal duty and devotion, and this first embrace initiates a connection that law and custom would reinforce throughout childhood. But the birth process isn't complete. The placenta remains inside Livia's uterus, and its safe delivery is crucial for her survival. Retained placental fragments can cause severe bleeding, infection, and death within days of an otherwise successful birth. Your attention must now shift from the thriving infant to ensuring his mother's continued health. You examine the delivered portion of the umbilical cord, looking for signs that might indicate placental problems. The length and appearance can suggest whether the placenta has separated completely from the uterine wall. Incomplete separation requires careful management to avoid forcing pieces that could tear and cause hemorrhage. "Livia, I need you to push gently one more time to help deliver the afterbirth," you instruct, positioning your hands to guide the placenta's emergence. This stage of labour, often overlooked in dramatic accounts of birth, actually carries significant risks that require skilled management. Many women who survived delivery died from complications related to placental retention or postpartum hemorrhage. The placenta slides out smoothly, complete and intact, a sight that brings profound relief to any experienced midwife. You examine it carefully, checking for missing pieces that might remain inside the uterus. The organ that sustained this infant for 9 months looks like raw meat to uninitiated observers, but to your trained eye, it reveals crucial information about the pregnancy's course and the mother's ongoing health risks. Ancient Roman understanding of placental function was limited but practical. Midwives knew that its complete delivery was essential for maternal survival, even if they couldn't explain the physiological mechanisms involved. They developed techniques for encouraging natural placental separation and learned to recognize danger signs that required more aggressive intervention. With both baby and placenta successfully delivered, you can finally allow yourself to believe that this crisis has ended happily. The infant cries lustily in his mother's arms, pink and vigorous. Livia, though exhausted, shows no signs of excessive bleeding or other complications. The attending women weep with joy and relief, embracing each other in celebration of a successful conclusion to what seemed like a hopeless situation just hours ago. But Roman births involved more than medical success. Complex social and legal rituals still lay ahead, determining whether this healthy infant would be accepted into his family or face the harsh fate of exposure and abandonment. The celebration in the birthing chamber quiets as footsteps echo in the corridor outside, masculine voices discussing urgent matters of state, the rustle of expensive togas, the unmistakable authority of Roman paterfamilias approaching to perform his most consequential duty. The infant, still nursing contentedly at his mother's breast, has no awareness that his fate will be decided in the next few minutes by a man he's never seen. You wrap the baby in fine linen swaddling clothes, preparing him for presentation to his father. Roman custom demanded that newborns be placed on the ground before the household patriarch, who would then either lift the child up in acceptance, tollere, or walk away in rejection. This ritual, encoded in Roman law for centuries, gave fathers absolute power over their children's survival, regardless of the infant's health or the mother's wishes. "Is my grandson perfect?" asks Claudia Maxima anxiously, adjusting the baby's swaddling to display him to best advantage. Wealthy Roman families took particular care with this presentation, understanding that a favourable first impression could influence the father's decision. The infant must appear robust, alert, and free from obvious defects that might suggest weakness or divine disfavour. You've assisted at births where healthy babies were rejected for reasons having nothing to do with their physical condition, fathers disappointed in the child's gender, families unable to afford another mouth to feed, political considerations that made additional heirs inconvenient, or simple superstition about birth timing or circumstances. The legal system that granted paterfamilias such absolute authority reflected Roman values, prioritizing family stability and patriarchal control over individual rights. The door opens to admit Senator Marcus Junius Maximus, still wearing his formal toga from morning business in the Forum. At 45, he embodies Roman aristocratic dignity, tall, stern-featured, accustomed to command and immediate obedience. His expression reveals nothing as he surveys the scene. His exhausted wife, the celebrating female relatives, the midwife holding his potential heir. "My lord," you say formally, bowing your head respectfully while maintaining your grip on the precious bundle. "Your wife has delivered a son after a difficult but successful labour. The child appears healthy and strong." Marcus approaches slowly, his sandals clicking against the mosaic floor. Roman fathers were expected to examine their children carefully before making the decision that would determine the infant's fate. This wasn't merely a symbolic gesture. The paterfamilias bore legal and financial responsibility for every person he accepted into his household, making the choice a serious economic and social commitment. You kneel and place the baby on the floor at the senator's feet, following the ancient ritual that symbolized the child's dependence on paternal mercy. The infant, warm and secure moments before, begins to cry as the cool air and hard surface disturb his comfort. His tiny voice fills the chamber with urgent demands that tug at every maternal instinct present. But Roman law grants him no rights until his father chooses to acknowledge him. The senator circles the infant slowly, examining him from every angle like a buyer inspecting goods in the marketplace. He checks the baby's limbs for proper formation, his face for symmetry, his responses for signs of alertness and vigour. Roman medical knowledge attributed many conditions to imbalances present from birth, making this initial assessment crucial for predicting the child's future health and capabilities. "He seems well formed," Marcus observes, his voice betraying no emotion. "Tell me about the birth. Were there signs of divine favour or displeasure?" Roman religion permeated every aspect of daily life, and unusual circumstances during labour could be interpreted as omens affecting the child's future prospects. Thunder, earthquakes, unusual animal behaviour, or even the timing of birth relative to religious festivals might influence a father's decision. "The labour was long, but not abnormally so for a first child," you reply carefully. "There were no supernatural signs, no unusual occurrences that might suggest divine intervention, either positive or negative. The birth proceeded according to natural law under the protection of Juno Lucina." Your words are chosen to emphasize normalcy and divine blessing, while avoiding mention of the serious complications that nearly caused disaster. The attending women hold their breath as Marcus continues his examination. Claudia Maxima grips her daughter's hand, both women united in anxiety, despite their different relationships to the child. The infant's crying intensifies, his face reddening with effort, his tiny fists waving as if already fighting for his place in the world. Roman attitudes toward infant exposure reflected complex cultural values that balanced individual sentiment against family welfare. A household that couldn't adequately provide for children was considered irresponsible to accept them. Fathers who reared children with serious disabilities faced criticism for burdening society with dependent persons. The practice, though harsh by modern standards, was viewed as necessary population control in a world without reliable contraception or social safety nets. Marcus reaches down and lifts his son from the floor. The gesture that transforms a biological product into a legal person with rights, inheritance, and social standing. The infant's crying moderates as he's lifted, perhaps responding instinctively to being held upright against a warm chest. The room exhales collectively as tension releases into celebration and tears of joy. "I accept this child as my son and heir," the senator announces formally. "Let him be named Marcus Junius Maximus Minor and enrolled among the citizens of Rome." The words carry legal force equivalent to a formal contract. From this moment forward, the infant enjoys all protections of Roman law and membership in one of the empire's most distinguished families. You retrieve the baby from his father and return him to Livia's arms, where he immediately settles contentedly against familiar warmth and scent. The acceptance ritual, terrifying in its implications, has concluded successfully. This child will grow up in luxury, receive the finest education available in the ancient world, and potentially hold high political office himself someday. But your responsibilities extend beyond witnessing family ceremonies. The infant must be properly cleaned, examined more thoroughly, and prepared for his first feeding. Roman medical knowledge emphasized the importance of early care in determining children's future health, making these first hours crucial for establishing patterns that would influence his development. You prepare warm water, scented with herbs, for the baby's first bath, a ritual that serves both hygienic and symbolic purposes. Roman custom held that washing the newborn cleansed away the pollution of birth and formally prepared the child for entry into civilized society. The water temperature must be precisely right. Too hot could burn delicate skin. Too cold could cause harmful chilling. The child should be bathed daily for the first month. You instruct Livia and her female relatives, then every other day afterward until he reaches his first birthday. Use water warmed to body temperature and add a small amount of wine for purification. These practices, developed through generations of experience, helped prevent infections and skin conditions that could threaten infant survival. As you carefully clean the vernix and birth fluids from the baby's skin, you continue your detailed examination for conditions that might not have been apparent during the father's initial inspection. You check his palate for clefts, his spine for abnormalities, his limbs for full range of motion. Early detection of problems allows for treatment or management strategies that can improve outcomes even with limited ancient medical resources. The baby responds well to handling, crying when disturbed, but calming quickly when comforted. His reflexes appear normal. He grasps objects placed in his palm, turns towards sounds, and demonstrates the rooting behavior that will help him locate his mother's breast for feeding. These positive signs suggest healthy neurological development and good chances for normal growth. Roman infant care emphasized physical conditioning from birth. Babies were swaddled tightly to encourage straight limb development, massaged daily to promote muscle tone, and exposed to controlled amounts of cold and heat to build resilience. These practices, based on observations about what produced healthy children, created systematic approaches to child rearing that influence development throughout childhood. As you complete the bathing and examination, dawn light begins to penetrate the birthing chamber more strongly. Rome is fully awake now, the sounds of commerce, construction, and daily life filtering through the villa's walls. But in this room, time still moves to the ancient rhythm of birth, recovery, and the first tentative steps of new life, beginning its journey through the world. Your work with this family is nearly complete, but the day holds more challenges. Somewhere across the city, another woman labours in circumstances far different from this luxurious villa, and her needs will test different aspects of your skills and experience. The immediate crisis has passed, but your responsibilities as a Roman midwife extend far beyond the moment of birth. Livia lies exhausted on silk cushions, her body slowly beginning the complex process of recovery from labour and delivery. The next few hours will determine whether she joins the ranks of women who survive childbirth or becomes another casualty of the dangers inherent in bringing life into the ancient world. You prepare a mixture of wine, water, and herbs designed to help contract the uterus and reduce bleeding. Roman medical knowledge, inherited largely from Greek physicians like Hippocrates and Galen, emphasized the importance of encouraging proper uterine involution, the process by which the organ returns to its pre-pregnancy size. Without this natural contraction, women could bleed to death from the large wound left where the placenta detached. Drink this slowly, you instruct Livia, offering her a bronze cup filled with the herbal preparation. It will help your body recover and give you strength for nursing your son. The mixture tastes bitter despite honey added to improve palatability, but Roman women understood that unpleasant medicines were often the most effective. The herbs you've selected, ergot to stimulate contractions, willow bark for pain relief, and iron-rich plants to combat anemia, represent centuries of accumulated knowledge about postpartum care. Roman understanding of the relationship between bleeding and maternal death was remarkably sophisticated for its time. Experienced midwives learned to estimate blood loss visually, recognizing the difference between normal postpartum flow and hemorrhage requiring immediate intervention. They developed techniques for controlling severe bleeding, including uterine massage, herbal preparations, and in desperate cases, crude surgical procedures that sometimes saved lives. You examine Livia carefully for signs of complications that might not be immediately obvious. Her skin colour remains good, suggesting adequate blood volume despite the stress of prolonged labour. Her pulse, checked by pressing fingers against her wrist, beats steadily without the rapid, weak rhythm that indicates shock or blood loss. Her breathing has returned to normal patterns, no longer showing the distress that marked the difficult phases of delivery. The birthing chamber must be cleaned and prepared for the recovery period that will last several days. Roman custom required new mothers to remain in ritual seclusion for a specific period, typically 8 days for boys, 9 for girls, during which they were considered religiously polluted and unable to participate in normal household activities. This practice, though based on religious beliefs rather than medical knowledge, actually provided beneficial rest time that improved maternal outcomes. Your female relatives will help you with nursing and infant care during the purification period, you explain to Livia as you help her move to a comfortable bed. Don't try to resume normal activities too quickly. Your body needs time to heal from the birth. Roman medical texts emphasize the importance of gradual recovery, warning that premature activity could cause hemorrhage, infection, or long-term complications affecting future pregnancies. The infant, now clean and properly swaddled, demonstrates the vigorous appetite typical of healthy newborns. Roman attitudes toward breastfeeding, varied by social class in wealthy women, often employed wet nurses to preserve their figures and free them for social activities, while poorer women nursed their own children from necessity. As a midwife, you advocated for maternal nursing when possible, believing it strengthened the bond between mother and child while providing superior nutrition. You instruct Livia in proper positioning techniques that will make nursing more comfortable and effective. The infant's strong sucking reflex triggers hormonal responses that help her uterus contract and reduce bleeding. A beneficial relationship that ancient midwives recognized empirically long before the underlying physiology was understood. These natural mechanisms, when functioning properly, provided some protection against the hemorrhage that killed so many new mothers. Roman infant care protocols required daily bathing, regular massage, and careful attention to signs of illness or developmental problems. You demonstrate proper swaddling techniques that provide security and warmth while allowing necessary movement. The linen strips must be snug enough to provide comfort, but not so tight as to restrict breathing or circulation. A balance that required skill and experience to achieve correctly. Watch for changes in his breathing, skin colour, or feeding behaviour. You advise the attending women who will provide ongoing care. Send for me immediately if he develops fever, refuses to nurse, or seems unusually listless. Roman medical knowledge about infant diseases was limited, but experienced practitioners learned to recognize early warning signs that might indicate treatable conditions or allow for palliative care during fatal illnesses. The room gradually returns to normal household rhythms as the immediate medical crisis ends. Slaves remove blood-stained linens and replace them with fresh materials. The altar in the corner receives new offerings, thanking the gods for successful delivery. Female relatives begin planning the naming ceremony that will formally introduce the infant to his extended family and social community. But your professional obligations continue beyond immediate medical care. Roman midwives served as advisors on infant feeding, childhood diseases, family planning, and women's health issues throughout their careers. The relationship established during birth often continued for years, creating networks of trust and expertise that benefited multiple generations of families. You prepare written instructions for ongoing care, dictating to a literate slave who records your recommendations on a wax tablet. These notes cover feeding schedules, bathing routines, signs of illness requiring attention, and developmental milestones to watch for during the infant's first months. Such documentation was unusual in ancient medicine, but reflected your systematic approach to patient care. Roman law required that births be registered with appropriate authorities, particularly for citizens whose children would eventually enjoy full legal rights. As the attending midwife, you'll provide testimony about the birth circumstances, the infant's apparent legitimacy, and any factors that might affect his legal status. This administrative role made midwives important figures in maintaining accurate population records. The morning sun now streams through the birthing chamber's windows, illuminating a scene of peaceful recovery after hours of crisis and struggle. Livia nurses her son contentedly, while female relatives clean and organize the room. The senator has returned to his business in the forum, confident that his household has weathered another successful addition to the family line. But across Rome, other women labour in circumstances far different from this luxurious villa. Your reputation for handling difficult cases means that emergency summons often interrupt your rest, sending you racing through the city's streets to confront new challenges that will test every aspect of your skills and experience. The ancient art of midwifery never rests, because the fundamental human need for skilled assistance during childbirth never diminishes regardless of social, class, wealth, or circumstance. The knock on the villa's door comes just as you're preparing to leave, your leather bag repacked with clean instruments and fresh herbal preparations. A breathless young man in a torn tunic stands in the entrance, his bare feet bleeding from running across Rome's rough stone streets. The desperation in his eyes tells you immediately that this isn't a routine call, somewhere in the city's labyrinth of tenements. Another woman fights for her life. "Midwife, please come quickly," he gasps, doubled over from exhaustion. "My wife. She's been trying to birth our baby since last night, but something's wrong. There's so much blood, and the other women don't know what to do." His Latin carries the accent of the urban poor, grammatically correct, but marked by the regional pronunciations that identify inhabitants of Rome's crowded insulae. You exchange glances with Livia's family, silently communicating the reality that wealthy Romans often ignored. While they celebrated successful births in marble chambers, ordinary citizens struggled with the same dangers in circumstances that made survival far less likely. Your profession demands that you serve all women, regardless of their ability to pay, though the contrast between your patient's circumstances never fails to humble you. "I must go," you tell Claudia Maxima, accepting a small leather purse that contains your fee plus a generous bonus for successful management of the difficult delivery. "Send for me if any complications develop, but your daughter and grandson should recover well with proper rest and care. The payment will sustain you for several weeks, allowing you to provide charity care to families who can barely afford food, let alone professional medical services." You follow the young father through Rome's morning chaos, leaving behind the elegant neighborhoods where senators and wealthy merchants conduct their business. The streets narrow as you descend toward the Suburra and other districts where the urban poor crowd into multi-story tenements that house dozens of families in conditions that would horrify suburban villa dwellers. The contrast is immediately apparent in every sense. The sweet smell of frankincense and rose oil gives way to the acrid stench of human waste, cooking smoke, and unwashed bodies packed too closely together. The gentle murmur of educated conversation is replaced by the harsh sounds of street vendors, crying children, and neighbors arguing through thin walls. The smooth marble beneath your feet becomes rough stone, often slippery with liquid you prefer not to identify. "How long has your wife been in labor?" you ask, as you navigate increasingly crowded streets where loaded donkeys, hurrying pedestrians, and street merchants create constant obstacles. Roman urban planning, magnificent in its public spaces and monuments, paid little attention to the daily realities of ordinary citizens who comprised the vast majority of the empire's population. "Since sunset yesterday," he replies, leading you up a narrow staircase that climbs the outside of a 5-story insula. "This is our first child, and we hoped." But the women helping her say they've never seen such bleeding. They're afraid she's going to die. His voice breaks with exhaustion and terror, emotions familiar to every husband whose wife faces the dangers of childbirth without access to skilled professional care. The building you enter represents typical housing for Rome's urban workers, craftsmen, shopkeepers, labourers, and freedmen who earned just enough to rent small spaces in structures that maximized occupancy while minimizing amenities. No running water, no private latrines, no hypercaused heating systems. Families crowded into single rooms, sharing cooking facilities and dealing with waste disposal as best they could manage. You climb 4 flights of stairs, passing doorways that reveal glimpses of family life among the poor. Children playing with homemade toys, women spinning wool by oil lamplight, old men mending tools or clothing. The sounds of everyday existence, babies crying, couples arguing, neighbours gossiping, create a constant background noise that contrasts sharply with the hushed elegance of patrician households. "She's in here," the young father says, opening a wooden door that reveals a single room serving as workshop, kitchen, and bedroom for his small family. The space, perhaps 10 feet square, contains the essential furniture of the urban poor: a bed, a small table, storage chests, and the tools of whatever trade provides their livelihood. Oil lamps provide flickering illumination that casts dancing shadows on walls stained by smoke and years of occupancy. The scene inside makes your heart sink. A young woman, perhaps 19 or 20, lies on a straw mattress soaked with blood. 3 neighbourhood women cluster around her, their faces showing the helpless anxiety of people confronting a crisis beyond their ability to manage. The labouring mother's skin has the greyish pallor that indicates significant blood loss, and her breathing comes in shallow gasps that suggest approaching shock. When did the heavy bleeding begin? You ask immediately, setting down your bag and beginning the rapid assessment that will determine whether this woman can be saved or whether you've arrived too late to prevent another tragic addition to Rome's infant and maternal mortality. Statistics. The contrast with your previous patient couldn't be more stark. Same biological crisis. Vastly different resources for managing it. About 2 hours ago, one of the attending women replies, "The pains were normal until then, but suddenly there was a gush of blood, and it hasn't stopped. We've tried everything we know. Cold cloths, prayers to Juno Lucina, even a charm we bought from an Egyptian priest. Nothing helps." Their efforts, though well-intentioned, reflect the gap between folk remedies and professional medical intervention that often meant the difference between life and death. You examine the patient quickly but thoroughly, your experienced hands gathering essential information about her condition. The cervix shows signs of tearing, probably caused by rapid labour progression, or perhaps attempted amateur assistance that created iatrogenic injury. The bleeding, while severe, seems to be coming from specific lacerations rather than the more ominous uterine hemorrhage that could prove rapidly fatal. The baby is positioned normally, you announce, but there's been tearing that's causing the bleeding. I need to repair the damage, but first we must deliver the child safely. Your calm, professional manner provides immediate reassurance to the terrified women surrounding the bed, though privately you're calculating the odds of saving both mother and infant given the blood loss that's already occurred. Roman obstetrics among the poor relied heavily on community networks of female support, but these informal systems had severe limitations when serious complications developed. Well-meaning neighbours might attempt interventions that caused more harm than good, or fail to recognise dangerous situations requiring immediate professional attention. Your arrival represents the difference between folk medicine and systematic medical care, though the delay may have already compromised the outcome. The young woman, Helena, her husband calls her, grips your hand with surprising strength despite her obvious weakness. "Please save my baby," she whispers. "We've been trying for 3 years to have a child. I can't lose this one." Her words carry the desperate hope of all women who've experienced the heartbreak of miscarriage or infant death, understanding that this pregnancy might be their only chance for motherhood. The cramped tenement room offers none of the advantages you enjoyed in the senator's villa. No clean water readily available, no braziers for heating instruments, no space to maneuver properly during complex procedures. You must work by the flickering light of oil lamps while crouched beside a blood-soaked straw mattress, using the same skills but with resources that barely qualify as adequate for emergency obstetrics. "I need clean water, as much as you can find," you instruct the attending women. "Heat it if possible, but clean is more important than warm right now." Roman tenements rarely had direct access to aqueduct water. Residents typically carried it in buckets from public fountains, stored it in ceramic vessels, and used it sparingly for drinking, cooking, and essential hygiene. The idea of unlimited clean water for medical procedures was a luxury these families couldn't imagine. Helena's condition has deteriorated during your initial assessment. Her pulse is rapid and weak, her skin cold and clammy despite the warm morning air. The bleeding continues steadily, creating an expanding stain on the mattress that speaks eloquently about time running out. Without modern blood transfusion or intravenous fluids, her survival depends entirely on stopping the hemorrhage quickly and hoping she has enough remaining blood volume to sustain life. You examine your instruments by lamplight, selecting those most appropriate for repairing cervical lacerations in cramped conditions. The bronze hooks that repositioned the senator's grandson won't help here. Helena needs sutures, pressure, and pharmaceutical intervention to survive the next hour. Your leather bag contains silk thread for stitching, bronze needles of various sizes, and herbal preparations designed to promote blood clotting and uterine contraction. Helena, I need you to stay awake and help me, you say firmly, gripping her shoulders to maintain eye contact. Your baby is ready to be born, but I must stop your bleeding first. This will be painful, but it's the only way to save both of you. Roman medical practice emphasized patient cooperation during procedures, since effective anesthesia didn't exist. Women had to endure surgical interventions while fully conscious, relying on their own willpower and whatever pain relief could be provided through herbal preparations. The neighborhood women hover anxiously as you begin working, their faces reflecting the universal female understanding that childbirth can transform from natural process to medical emergency without warning. Unlike the educated female relatives in the senator's household, these women have limited knowledge of obstetric complications but abundant experience with the harsh realities facing poor families when medical crises develop. You locate the source of bleeding, a deep tear in the cervical tissue, probably caused by rapid dilation combined with pushing before full opening occurred. The laceration, while serious, is repairable if you can work quickly enough to prevent fatal blood loss. Using bronze needles and silk thread, you begin the delicate process of suturing living tissue while the patient remains conscious and the baby awaits delivery. Roman surgical techniques, though primitive by modern standards, were surprisingly effective when performed by skilled practitioners. Midwives learned suturing from apprenticeships rather than formal medical training, developing expertise through years of treating tears, lacerations, and other birth-related injuries. The procedures were crude but often successful, particularly when performed early enough to prevent complications. Hold the lamps steady. You instruct the attending women as you work by flickering light that makes precise suturing challenging. Each stitch must be placed carefully to achieve hemostasis without creating additional tissue damage or compromising future deliveries. The silk thread, imported from distant provinces and expensive enough to represent a significant investment, provides the best available material for internal sutures that must hold under considerable stress. Helena grips her husband's hand while you work, her knuckles white with effort to remain still during the painful procedure. Roman culture emphasized female stoicism during childbirth, viewing the ability to endure labor pain as a virtue that prepared women for the hardships of motherhood. This cultural expectation, while sometimes unrealistic, did encourage cooperation during medical interventions that required patient participation. The bleeding gradually diminishes as your sutures take hold, each carefully placed stitch reducing the flow of blood that threatened to drain away Helena's life. But the procedure has consumed precious time during which the baby remained in the birth canal, potentially suffering from oxygen deprivation that could cause brain damage or death. You must now shift focus from maternal hemorrhage to fetal survival, managing both crises simultaneously. I can see the baby's head, you announce, and indeed, the infant is crowning, despite the complications that nearly cost his mother's life. Roman medical knowledge recognized that babies could survive surprisingly long periods in the birth canal, but also understood that prolonged labor increased risks for both mother and child. Every minute of delay potentially compromised the outcome. You support the emerging head carefully, checking for nuchal cord and assessing the baby's color and muscle tone. The infant appears pale and somewhat limp, concerning signs that suggest he's been stressed by the prolonged delivery and maternal blood loss. But his heart continues beating, and he responds to stimulation, indicating that immediate resuscitation might be successful. The shoulders deliver with gentle traction, followed quickly by the rest of the tiny body. You hold a perfectly formed but worryingly quiet baby boy, his skin mottled blue and white, his breathing irregular, his muscle tone poor compared to the vigorous infant you delivered earlier in the senator's villa. This child needs immediate attention to survive his traumatic entry into the world. You work quickly to clear his airways and stimulate breathing, using techniques passed down through generations of midwives who learned to recognize and treat newborn respiratory distress. Gentle suction with a hollow reed removes mucus from nose and mouth. Vigorous rubbing stimulates circulation and breathing reflexes. Cool water applied to the face can sometimes trigger the gasp reflex that initiates regular respiration. After several tense minutes, the baby takes his first real breath and releases a weak but audible cry. His color begins to improve as his lungs expand and his circulation adjusts to independent life. The transformation from blue-tinged unresponsiveness to pink vitality seems miraculous every time you witness it, though you know that some infants who appear to recover initially may still succumb to complications in the hours or days following birth. Helena weeps with relief and exhaustion as you place her son on her chest. The bleeding has stopped thanks to your suturing, and her vital signs, while still concerning, suggest she'll survive this ordeal. The baby, though smaller and weaker than ideal, demonstrates the resilience that allows some infants to overcome difficult starts and develop normally despite traumatic deliveries. But your work in this crowded tenement room isn't finished. The placenta must still be delivered. Helena's condition monitored for signs of infection or renewed bleeding, and the social realities of poverty addressed as they affect this family's ability to care for their new child. The successful delivery of Helena's son represents only 2/3 of the birth process. The placenta, that mysterious organ that sustained fetal life for 9 months, must still separate from the uterine wall and emerge intact. In wealthy households with adequate space and resources, this third stage of labor usually proceeds smoothly. Here in the crowded tenement, with a weakened mother and limited supplies, placental delivery poses additional risks that could still prove fatal despite your successful management of the earlier crisis. Roman medical knowledge about placental function was limited but practical. Experienced midwives understood that complete delivery was essential for maternal survival, even if they couldn't explain why retained fragments caused fever, bleeding, and death within days of an otherwise successful birth. They developed techniques for encouraging natural separation and learned to recognize signs requiring more aggressive intervention. Helena, you're going to feel more contractions now as your body works to deliver the afterbirth, you explain, monitoring her condition for signs of renewed bleeding or other complications. The sutures you place to repair her cervical tears appear to be holding well, but any additional stress on her reproductive system could cause them to fail and restart the hemorrhage that nearly killed her. You examine the portion of umbilical cord that remains outside Helena's body, looking for signs that might indicate placental separation. The cord should lengthen gradually as the placenta detaches and descends, and its appearance can suggest whether the process is proceeding normally or whether complications are developing that require intervention. The tenement room's cramped conditions make proper positioning difficult, but you help Helena assume a semi-upright posture that allows gravity to assist placental delivery. Unlike the elegant birthing stool available in wealthy households, she must make do with her husband supporting her back while she sits on the edge of the blood-stained mattress. The improvised arrangement lacks dignity, but serves the essential physiological purpose. Roman obstetric practice emphasized patience during placental delivery, recognizing that premature traction on the umbilical cord could cause the structure to tear and leave fragments inside the uterus. This complication, known as retained placenta, was often fatal in an era without surgical techniques for safe removal. Experienced midwives learned to resist the temptation to hurry this crucial phase, despite anxiety about the mother's condition. After 20 minutes of gentle contractions, you feel the telltale shift that indicates placental separation. "I can see it coming," you announce, and indeed, the dark mass of placental tissue begins to emerge from Helena's body. The organ looks shocking to uninitiated observers, raw, bloody, alien in its appearance, but to your trained eye, it represents successful completion of the birth process. You catch the placenta in clean linen as it delivers, immediately examining it for completeness. Any missing pieces could remain attached to the uterine wall, causing persistent bleeding, infection, or other complications that might prove fatal days or weeks later. The examination requires careful attention to detail, checking both maternal and fetal surfaces for tears or abnormalities that might indicate problems. "It's complete," you announce with relief, showing the intact placenta to the anxious women surrounding Helena's bed. Roman custom held that the condition and appearance of the afterbirth could predict the infant's future health and fortune, making this examination a matter of both medical and superstitious interest. A healthy placenta suggested divine favour and good prospects for the newborn. The placental delivery triggers a fresh gush of blood as the uterus contracts to compress the large vessels where the organ was attached. This bleeding, though alarming to observers, is normal and necessary for maternal survival. The uterine muscle must squeeze these vessels closed to prevent continued hemorrhage, a process that usually occurs naturally but sometimes requires assistance through massage or herbal preparations. You palpate Helena's abdomen, feeling for the contracted uterus that should be firm and well below her navel. The organ responds appropriately to your touch, suggesting that the normal involution process has begun successfully. But given her significant blood loss during the earlier crisis, you remain concerned about her ability to tolerate additional bleeding even within normal ranges. "Drink this," you instruct, offering Helena a preparation of ergot and other herbs designed to maintain strong uterine contractions. The mixture tastes terrible despite honey added for palatability, but Roman women understood that bitter medicines were often the most effective. The ergot, derived from a fungus that grows on grain, contains compounds that stimulate smooth muscle contraction, knowledge discovered through empirical observation centuries before the underlying pharmacology was understood. The baby, now cleaned and wrapped in clean linen, provided by neighbours, nurses, tentatively at his mother's breast. The suckling stimulates hormonal responses that help contract Helena's uterus and reduce bleeding, a beneficial relationship that ancient midwives recognized without understanding the physiological mechanisms involved. This natural design provided some protection against postpartum hemorrhage, though it couldn't compensate for severe blood loss or other serious complications. Roman attitudes toward placental disposal reflected both practical and supernatural concerns. The organ needed to be buried or burned to prevent scavenging animals from dragging it through the streets, but it also had to be handled according to religious customs that varied by family tradition and regional practice. Some believed that improper disposal could curse the newborn or cause future reproductive problems for the mother. Burn it completely, you instruct Helena's husband, wrapping the placenta in additional linen for transport. Don't leave any pieces for dogs or rats to find. The complete destruction will ensure good fortune for your son and future fertility for your wife. Your words blend practical hygiene advice with religious reassurance, acknowledging Roman beliefs while promoting behaviors that reduce infection risks. As the immediate medical crisis ends, you turn your attention to the broader challenges facing this family. Helena has survived a difficult delivery, but her recovery will be complicated by the poverty that affects every aspect of her life. No comfortable bed for extended rest, no servants to manage household duties, no luxury foods to rebuild her strength after significant blood loss. You need to rest for at least 8 days, you tell Helena firmly. Don't try to resume normal activities too quickly, even if your family needs you. Let the neighbour women help with cooking and cleaning. The advice follows Roman medical recommendations for postpartum recovery, though you know that economic necessity often forces poor women to ignore medical wisdom in favour of immediate survival needs. The contrast with your earlier patient couldn't be more pronounced. Livia will recover, in silk-draped luxury, with servants attending her every need, while Helena must return to the harsh realities of tenement life within days of nearly bleeding to death. Both women faced the same biological crisis, but their resources for managing recovery differ as dramatically as their birthing environments. Roman medical practice recognized that social conditions affected health outcomes, though practitioners had limited ability to address systemic inequalities that influenced patient welfare. As a midwife serving all social classes, you witnessed daily the disparities that made identical medical conditions vastly different in their implications for survival and long-term health. Unlike the confident authority displayed by Senator Marcus when examining his heir, Helena's husband approaches his newborn son with obvious anxiety that reflects the harsh economic realities facing Rome's urban poor. The infant, small and weak after his traumatic delivery, represents both hope for family continuation and a mouth to feed in a household already struggling to survive on the uncertain wages of skilled labour. Is he? Will he be strong enough to live? The young father asks, his voice betraying the conflict between paternal affection and practical concerns about raising a child in poverty. Roman law granted him the same absolute authority over his son's fate possessed by wealthy senators, but the exercise of that power carried different implications when resources were scarce and survival uncertain. You examine the baby carefully, assessing his chances for healthy development despite the difficult start. He's smaller than ideal, but not dramatically underweight. His reflexes appear normal, and his breathing has stabilized since the initial respiratory distress. Most importantly, he demonstrates the vigorous appetite that suggests good chances for survival if he receives adequate nutrition and care. He's a fighter, you assure the anxious parents. The difficult birth made him weak initially, but he's responding well to nursing and warming. With proper care, he should develop normally. Your words carry the weight of professional experience with hundreds of newborns. Though privately, you know that many factors beyond medical assessment will determine this child's ultimate fate. Roman infant mortality rates were staggering by modern standards. Perhaps 30 to 40% of babies died before their first birthday, with rates even higher among the urban poor. who lacked access to adequate nutrition, clean water, and medical care. Fathers making decisions about infant acceptance had to consider not just immediate costs, but the emotional trauma of investing in children who might not survive to contribute to family welfare. The tenement room falls silent as Helena's husband kneels beside the mattress where his son lies nursing. Roman law required that he perform the traditional ritual of acceptance or rejection, but the ceremony feels different in this cramped space compared to the marble elegance of patrician households. Here, the decision carries immediate economic implications that could determine whether the family eats regularly in coming months. "I accept this child as my son," he says quietly, lifting the infant from his mother's arms. "Let him be named Marcus in honor of the emperor, and may the gods grant him strength to survive." The words follow traditional formulas, but his tone lacks the confident authority of aristocratic fathers whose resources make child rearing a matter of social advantage rather than economic survival. The acceptance brings tears of relief to Helena's eyes, though she remains too weak to celebrate extensively. Roman women understood that paternal rejection meant immediate death for their infants, exposed. Children rarely survived more than a few hours without family protection and resources. The father's decision to accept his son, despite the family's poverty, reflects both paternal affection and hope that the child will eventually contribute to household welfare. You witness the complex emotions surrounding infant acceptance among Rome's poor, love, tempered by practicality, hope shadowed by harsh experience with child mortality, joy muted by awareness of the struggles ahead. These families couldn't afford to rear children as future philosophers or politicians. They needed workers, contributors, survivors who could help support elderly parents and continue family lines despite limited opportunities. "He'll need frequent feeding for the first few weeks," you instruct Helena, demonstrating proper positioning techniques for nursing. "Your milk production may be reduced because of the blood loss, so watch his weight carefully. If he seems hungry after nursing, you may need to supplement with goat's milk or find a wet nurse temporarily." The advice addresses practical realities rarely faced by wealthy families who could hire multiple wet nurses without economic strain. Roman urban poor often struggled with infant nutrition when maternal health problems affected milk production. Goat's milk, when available, provided adequate nutrition but required resources that many families couldn't afford regularly. Community networks sometimes arranged informal milk sharing among nursing mothers, though such arrangements depended on neighborhood relationships and mutual trust. The baby settles contentedly against his father's chest, already adapting to the warmth and familiar heartbeat that will comfort him through the adjustment to independent life. Roman beliefs about father-infant bonding emphasize the importance of early physical contact, holding that babies who were immediately accepted and handled by their fathers developed stronger constitutions and more loyal character. "Keep him warm and dry. You continue your instructions while packing your instruments. The apartment is drafty, so use extra blankets and check him frequently for signs of chilling. Cold can be dangerous for newborns, especially those who started life weakened." Roman understanding of infant thermoregulation was limited but practical. They knew that temperature extremes killed babies, even when other factors suggested good survival prospects. The attending neighbor women offer practical assistance that reflects the informal support networks sustaining Rome's urban poor. One promises to help with cooking during Helena's recovery period. Another offers clean linen strips for the baby's swaddling. A third mentions knowing someone who might have surplus goat's milk available for purchase at reduced rates. These arrangements, though modest compared to patrician resources, often meant the difference between successful recovery and family tragedy. You prepare a smaller quantity of postpartum herbs for Helena, not because she needs less medical care than wealthy patients, but because her family can't afford the extensive pharmaceutical preparations available to aristocratic households. The ergot and willow bark you leave will help control bleeding and manage pain, but she'll need to rely primarily on rest and careful self-monitoring rather than comprehensive medical support. Send for me if the bleeding increases, if you develop fever, or if the baby seems ill. You instruct, knowing that the family's resources for paying additional medical fees are extremely limited. Roman midwives often provided charity care to families who couldn't afford full services, understanding that untreated complications could create public health problems affecting entire neighborhoods. The economic realities of your profession mean that fees from wealthy patients, like Senator Marcus, subsidize care for families like Helena's, who represent the majority of Rome's population. This informal system of cross-subsidization allowed skilled medical practitioners to serve all social classes while maintaining sustainable practices, though it also meant that the quality and extent of care varied dramatically depending on patients' ability to pay. As you prepare to leave the cramped tenement, you reflect on the contrast between your two patients this morning. Both women faced identical biological challenges during childbirth, but their social circumstances created vastly different experiences of pregnancy, delivery, and recovery. Roman society's inequalities were never more apparent than in the birthing chamber, where wealth could literally mean the difference between life and death. Helena's husband presses a small copper coin into your hand, probably his entire savings, offered despite the family's desperate need for every sestertius. "Thank you for saving them both," he whispers. "I don't know how to repay you properly." His gratitude, though touching, reminds you of the impossible choices facing poor families when medical crises exceed their financial resources. The morning sun climbs higher as you descend the tenement stairs, passing doorways where other families conduct their daily struggles with poverty, disease, and the countless challenges of urban survival. Rome's magnificence, visible in its monuments and public buildings, was built on the labour of these ordinary citizens, whose private lives rarely achieved the comfort and security that their efforts made possible for the wealthy elite. Your leather bag, now containing instruments stained with the blood of both patrician and plebeian mothers, represents the democratic nature of human biology. Rich and poor face identical challenges during childbirth, though their resources for managing those challenges differ as dramatically as their living conditions. As a midwife serving all social classes, you bridge worlds that rarely intersect except during the universal human experiences of birth, illness, and death. But your day isn't finished. Across the city, other women labour in circumstances that will test different aspects of your skills and experience, reminding you that the ancient art of obstetrics never rests because the fundamental human need for skilled assistance during childbirth transcends all boundaries of class, wealth, and social status. The messenger finds you at a street-side tavern where you've stopped to eat bread and drink watered wine, while your mourning patients rest under the care of their families. A well-dressed slave approaches your table with the confident manner that identifies servants from prosperous households, not aristocratic like the senator's familia, but comfortable enough to afford professional medical services without the desperate economy that characterizes Rome's urban poor. "My master's wife needs your assistance urgently," he announces with a bow that acknowledges your professional status while maintaining appropriate social hierarchy. "She's been in labour since dawn, but the baby seems stuck. Our household physician examined her, but said this required a midwife's expertise. The familiar pattern, male doctors retreating from hands-on obstetric work, leaving the practical challenges to women who specialized in birth management. You gather your supplies and follow the slave through Rome's midday bustle toward the commercial district, where successful merchants build comfortable homes that reflect their prosperity without approaching aristocratic luxury. These families, importers, exporters, manufacturers, bankers, formed the economic backbone of the empire while occupying social positions between the senatorial elite and the urban masses who provided their labor. The merchant's house represents the solid prosperity of Rome's middle class, well-built but not ostentatious, decorated with quality materials but not exotic luxuries, staffed with enough slaves to ensure comfort but not the small armies that served patrician households. The atrium features a modest impluvium surrounded by painted walls depicting domestic scenes rather than mythological grandeur. "Tell me about your mistress," you request, as the slave leads you through corridors lined with storage, amphorae, and business records that speak to the household's commercial activities. How many children has she borne? Have there been previous difficulties? The questions reflect your systematic approach to each case, gathering information that might predict complications and guide treatment decisions. "She's 25, and this is her 4th pregnancy," he replies. "She lost one baby early, but delivered 2 healthy children without major problems. This labor started normally, but she's been pushing for hours without progress. The physician said the baby might be too large for safe delivery. The history suggests an experienced mother whose previous successful births make current difficulties more concerning. Castest multiparous women usually deliver more easily than first-time mothers. You enter the birthing chamber to find a scene that combines elements from both your earlier patients, more comfortable than the tenement, but less luxurious than the senator's villa. The labouring woman lies on a well-made bed covered with clean linen, attended by female relatives and household slaves who provide emotional support and practical assistance. Oil lamps provide adequate lighting, and braziers warm the room to comfortable temperature. The mother, Claudia Tertia, wife of a successful wine merchant, greets your arrival with obvious relief. "Thank the gods you've come," she gasps between contractions. "Something's wrong this time. The baby won't come no matter how hard I push, and I'm getting so tired." Her exhaustion is apparent in every line of her face, her voice hoarse from hours of effort that have produced no visible progress. Your examination reveals the source of the problem immediately: a baby presenting in breech position with buttocks rather than head leading the way. Breech deliveries, while manageable by skilled practitioners, carried significantly higher risks for both mother and infant than normal vertex presentations. The complications were compounded by this infant's apparent large size, creating a mechanical problem that required precise technique to resolve safely. "Your baby is coming bottom first instead of head first," you explain to Claudia and her attending women. "This makes delivery more difficult, but not impossible. I'm going to try some techniques to help the baby navigate through the birth canal safely." Your calm, professional manner masks the genuine concern you feel. Breech deliveries could become obstetric emergencies, requiring crude surgical interventions that often proved fatal for mother, child, or both. Roman medical knowledge about breech presentations was limited but practical. Experienced midwives developed techniques for managing these difficult deliveries, though their success rates were significantly lower than for normal births. The procedures required exceptional skill, precise timing, and considerable luck to achieve favourable outcomes for both patients. You prepare your instruments with particular care, selecting tools that might be needed for breech delivery management: bronze hooks for gentle traction, olive oil for lubrication, linen strips for improving grip on slippery surfaces. Most importantly, You prepare yourself mentally for the complex decisions that breech deliveries often required, when to intervene actively versus allowing natural forces to work, when to attempt repositioning versus accepting abnormal presentation. I need you to move to the birthing stool, you instruct Claudia. The upright position will help gravity assist the delivery, and I'll have better access to help guide your baby through the birth canal. The stool in this household, while not as elaborate as aristocratic examples, provides adequate support and positioning for the challenging work ahead. Roman obstetric practice recognized that breech deliveries required different management techniques than vertex presentations. The baby's buttocks and legs could usually deliver spontaneously, but the shoulders and head often became trapped, creating life-threatening emergencies that demanded immediate expert intervention. Timing became crucial. Premature assistance could cause injury, while delayed intervention could result in asphyxiation. As Claudia settles onto the birthing stool, you position yourself to monitor the baby's progress and provide assistance as needed. Breech deliveries often proceeded in unpredictable patterns, requiring midwives to adapt their techniques moment by moment based on what they observed and felt during the process. No two cases followed identical patterns, making experience and judgment more important than rigid protocols. I can see the baby's bottom, you announce as the infant begins to crown. The buttocks appear larger than normal, confirming your assessment that this baby's size contributes significantly to the delivery difficulties. Large babies, while often healthy, created mechanical problems during birth that required careful management to prevent injury to mother or child. The delivery proceeds slowly as the baby's hips navigate the birth canal. You provide gentle traction and guidance, helping the infant maintain proper positioning while avoiding excessive force that could cause fractures or other injuries. Breech babies needed to rotate through specific movements to allow passage of their shoulders and head, movements that sometimes required expert assistance to complete successfully. One leg is out, you report, as the infant's limbs begin to emerge. Roman medical texts described various breech presentations: complete breech with both hips and knees flexed, incomplete breech with one or both legs extended, frank breech with hips flexed but knees straight. Each variation required slightly different management techniques, though all carried elevated risks compared to normal deliveries. The process continues with agonizing slowness, each contraction bringing more of the baby into view, while creating new challenges for safe completion of the delivery. You work steadily to prevent cord compression, maintain proper positioning, and prepare for the critical moment when the baby's head must navigate through the birth canal, often the most dangerous phase of breech delivery. The baby's torso emerges slowly, revealing a robust male infant whose size confirms your assessment that mechanical factors are complicating this delivery. Roman nutrition among successful merchant families often produced larger babies than those born to poorer mothers, creating a paradox where prosperity increased certain birth risks, even while providing better resources for managing complications. Hold steady, you instruct Claudia as another contraction brings the baby's shoulders into view. Don't push unless I tell you. We need to let each part emerge at its own pace. Breech deliveries required careful coordination between natural uterine forces and manual assistance, a balance that could only be achieved through experience with dozens of similar cases. You support the infant's body carefully while maneuvering to free first one shoulder, then the other. The baby's arms, initially trapped against his sides, must be extracted individually using gentle traction combined with specific rotational movements. Roman medical texts described these techniques in theoretical terms, but actual practice required tactile sensitivity and three-dimensional visualization skills that could only be developed through hands-on experience. The infant's colour remains good despite the prolonged delivery, suggesting adequate oxygen supply through the umbilical cord. But you know that breech babies face increased risks of cord compression, as the head, the largest part, must pass through a birth canal that has already been stretched by the smaller body parts. Time becomes critical once the shoulders emerge, as delay increases the chances of fetal asphyxiation. "I need to help guide the baby's head," you explain, as you prepare for the most dangerous phase of the delivery. Roman obstetric technique for breech head delivery involved specific finger positions and gentle traction that required precise timing and expert judgment. Too much force could cause cervical spine injuries. Too little could result in the head becoming trapped and the baby suffocating before complete delivery. You slip your fingers along the baby's face, feeling for the proper landmarks that will guide your assistance with head flexion and descent. The infant's features feel perfectly formed under your experienced touch, bend, a good sign that suggests normal development despite the complicated delivery. But until the head emerges completely, both mother and child remain at significant risk for catastrophic complications. Claudia grips the birthing stool's handles with white knuckles as you work to complete the delivery. Her exhaustion is obvious after hours of difficult labour, but she maintains the cooperation essential for successful breech management. Roman culture's emphasis on female stoicism during childbirth served practical purposes in situations like this, where patient movement or panic could transform manageable difficulties into life-threatening emergencies. The baby's chin appears first, followed gradually by his mouth, nose, and eyes as his head navigates through the birth canal. Each millimetre of progress represents a small victory in the complex mechanical puzzle of breech delivery. You maintain gentle downward traction while supporting the infant's neck, ensuring that his airway remains clear as he makes the transition from intrauterine to independent existence. Almost there, you announce as the baby's forehead becomes visible. Roman midwives learned to provide encouraging updates during prolonged procedures, understanding that maternal morale affected cooperation and, potentially, successful outcomes. The psychological aspects of difficult deliveries were as important as the technical skills required for safe completion. With a final gentle pull, coordinated with Claudia's pushing effort, the baby's head delivers completely. The infant takes his first breath immediately, filling the birthing chamber with the strong cry that signals successful transition to air breathing. His colour improves rapidly from the dusky blue of oxygen deprivation to the pink glow of adequate circulation to a transformation that never fails to inspire awe even in experienced practitioners. "A beautiful, healthy son," you announce, lifting the vigorous infant for his mother's inspection. Despite the challenging delivery, he appears robust and alert, his large size now an advantage rather than an obstacle. Roman beliefs held that babies who survived difficult births developed stronger constitutions and more determined characters, qualities valued in a competitive society that rewarded resilience and persistence. You work quickly to clear the baby's airways and assess his overall condition while monitoring Claudia for signs of excessive bleeding or other postpartum complications. Breech deliveries sometimes caused more trauma to maternal tissues than normal births, requiring careful evaluation to ensure that no serious injuries had occurred during the prolonged process. The placenta delivers without incident 15 minutes later, completing the birth process successfully. You examine it thoroughly for signs of abnormalities that might explain the difficult delivery or predict future problems. The organ appears healthy and complete, suggesting that the mechanical challenges were related to fetal size and position rather than placental dysfunction. "He's perfect," Claudia whispers, as you place her son in her arms. The relief in her voice reflects the universal maternal fear that difficult labours might indicate something wrong with the baby. Roman superstitions often attributed birth complications to divine displeasure or fetal defects, making normal infant appearance particularly reassuring after problematic deliveries. The baby demonstrates the vigorous nursing instinct that bodes well for his survival and development. His strong sucking stimulates maternal hormonal responses that help contract the uterus and reduce bleeding, natural mechanisms that provided some protection against postpartum hemorrhage even after traumatic deliveries. These biological safeguards, refined through millions of years of evolution, worked even when human understanding of the underlying processes remained limited. Roman customs required that the infant be presented to his father for acceptance or rejection, but merchant families rarely rejected healthy babies, regardless of delivery complications. The economic calculations differed from those facing the urban, poor, prosperous households, could afford to rear additional children without significant hardship, while also benefiting from extra hands to help with family businesses as the children matured. Your husband should see his son, you suggest, as you help Claudia move to a comfortable bed for the recovery period. Roman fathers often waited anxiously during difficult deliveries, balancing concern for their wives' welfare with anticipation of meeting their potential heirs. The successful conclusion of complicated births typically occasioned elaborate celebrations that reflected both relief and joy at favourable outcomes. The afternoon sun streams through the birthing chamber's windows as you clean your instruments and prepare to document another successful management of obstetric complications. Each difficult case added to your reservoir of experience and reputation, building the expertise that made you one of Rome's most sought-after midwives, despite the humble origins of your profession. But your day continues, with more calls waiting, the relentless cycle of human reproduction that ensures midwives never lack for patients, challenges, or opportunities to practice the ancient art of bringing life safely into the world through skill, experience, and occasional miracles that seem to transcend purely human abilities. The setting sun paints Rome's 7 hills in shades of gold and red as you make your way through familiar streets toward what you hope will be your final call of an exhausting day. Your leather bag, now heavy with the accumulated tools and supplies of multiple births, bounces against your hip with each step. The bronze instruments inside have been cleaned and resharpened, ready for whatever challenges await in the gathering dusk. Your reputation for handling difficult cases means that emergency summons often interrupt your rest, sending you racing across the city to confront new crises that test every aspect of your accumulated knowledge and experience. This evening's call comes from the household of a military officer whose wife has been labouring since dawn. Another potentially complicated delivery requiring the expertise that separates skilled midwives from well-meaning neighbourhood women. The officer's house reflects the solid prosperity of Rome's military class, comfortable without being luxurious, practical rather than ostentatious, built to accommodate a family that might be reassigned to distant provinces at the emperor's command. The atrium displays weapons and military decorations alongside household gods, creating an atmosphere that combines domestic comfort with professional readiness for service throughout the empire. My wife served as a camp follower during my posting in Germania, the centurion explains as he leads you toward the birthing chamber. She's birthed 2 children already, but never had such difficulties. The labour started normally, but something changed around midday. She's been crying in pain for hours, and the baby still hasn't come. His weathered face shows the concern of a professional soldier accustomed to managing crises but helpless in the face of obstetric complications. Roman military families often faced unique challenges during childbirth, particularly women who had spent years following legions through frontier territories where medical care was limited and living conditions harsh. These experiences sometimes created complications that didn't become apparent until subsequent pregnancies in more settled circumstances. Campaign hardships could affect reproductive health in ways that Roman medicine couldn't fully understand or predict. You enter the birthing chamber to find a woman whose appearance tells the story of life on Rome's violent frontiers. Scars on her arms speak of attacks by barbarian raiders, while her calloused hands reveal years of hard labour supporting military operations. At 32, she's older than your previous patients, with the weathered appearance of someone who has survived challenges that would have killed softer women from sheltered backgrounds. Tell me about your pain, you request, as you begin your examination. Is it constant, or does it come in waves? Where do you feel it most strongly? The questions reflect systematic diagnostic approaches developed through years of distinguishing between normal labour pain and symptoms, indicating serious complications requiring immediate intervention. It feels like something is tearing inside, she gasps between contractions. Different from my other labours, sharper, more frightening, and there's been bleeding since afternoon, more than seems normal. Her description raises immediate concerns about uterine rupture, placental abruption, or other obstetric emergencies that could prove rapidly fatal without appropriate treatment. Your examination reveals a situation more serious than the morning's cases. The baby appears to be in normal position, but you detect signs of uterine distress that suggest potential rupture of the organ's wall. A catastrophic complication that kills both mother and child unless managed immediately with primitive surgical techniques that rarely succeeded in ancient times. Roman medical knowledge about uterine rupture was limited but practical. Experienced midwives learned to recognize the signs: sudden onset of severe pain, different from normal contractions, abnormal bleeding patterns, loss of normal fetal heart tones, and maternal symptoms suggesting internal injury. The condition usually occurred in women who had experienced trauma during previous deliveries or difficult labours that weakened uterine integrity. I need to examine you internally to better understand what's happening, you explain, preparing for a procedure that might reveal the worst-case scenario you've learned to dread. Uterine rupture represented one of the few obstetric emergencies that ancient medicine couldn't manage effectively. The surgical techniques required to repair the damage exceeded the capabilities of even the most skilled practitioners. Your examination confirms your fears: a small tear in the lower uterine segment that's allowing blood and amniotic fluid to leak into the abdominal cavity. The rupture hasn't extended completely through the organ's wall, but it's expanding with each contraction, threatening to become a complete separation that would cause massive internal bleeding and rapid death for both patients. We need to deliver this baby immediately, you announce, your calm voice masking the urgency of the situation. The uterus has a small tear that could become much larger if labour continues normally. I'm going to try to speed up the delivery using techniques that carry some risks but are necessary given the circumstances. The explanation follows Roman medical ethics that required practitioners to inform patients about dangerous procedures while maintaining authority necessary for crisis management. You prepare your most aggressive instruments: bronze hooks for rapid extraction, forceps for mechanical traction, sharp knives for emergency procedures that might become necessary if conservative management fails. The tools represent the extreme end of Roman obstetric capability, techniques used only when the alternative was certain death for mother and child. Roman military families understood risk assessment and crisis decision-making in ways that civilian populations often didn't. The centurion's wife grips your hand and nods grimly, accepting whatever procedures you deem necessary for survival. Her years of frontier life had taught her that sometimes the only choice was between terrible risks and certain death. Hold her steady. You instruct the attending women as you position the bronze hooks for assisted delivery. The technique requires precise placement and careful traction that removes the baby quickly without causing additional trauma to already damaged uterine tissue. Every movement must be calculated to minimize further injury while achieving rapid completion of the delivery process. The assisted delivery proceeds with controlled urgency as you work to extract the baby before the uterine rupture extends completely. Each pull with the bronze instruments brings more of the infant into view, while creating new stresses on tissue that's already beginning to fail. The balance between speed and safety becomes critical. Too much force could worsen the rupture, while insufficient assistance might allow the tear to extend naturally. After 10 minutes of intense work, you deliver a healthy but small infant whose early emergence probably saved both his life and his mother's. The baby cries vigorously despite his premature transition to independent life, suggesting good lung development and adequate reserves for surviving the abbreviated gestation period. Most importantly, his delivery removes the mechanical forces that were driving the uterine rupture toward complete separation. But your work has only begun. The torn uterus must be repaired to prevent fatal hemorrhage, a surgical challenge that pushes ancient medical techniques to their absolute limits and beyond. The next hour will determine whether this military family celebrates a successful birth or mourns a double tragedy that no amount of courage or skill could prevent. The birthing chamber transforms into a makeshift surgical suite as you prepare for the most challenging procedure of your career, attempting to repair a partially ruptured uterus using Bronze Age tools and techniques that would horrify modern surgeons. Oil lamps are repositioned to maximize lighting, clean linens arranged to create sterile fields, and your instruments laid out in precise order for the delicate work ahead. Roman surgical knowledge, while primitive by contemporary standards, included techniques for internal procedures that sometimes succeeded despite obvious limitations. Military medicine had advanced significantly during the empire's expansion, as army surgeons learned to treat battle wounds that civilian physicians rarely encountered. Some of these techniques could be adapted for obstetric emergencies, though success rates remained discouragingly low. "I need to repair the tear in your uterus," you explained to the centurion's wife, who lies pale but alert after the difficult delivery. "This will be painful and the outcome is uncertain, but it's your only chance for survival. Without repair, you'll bleed to death within hours." Roman medical ethics required honest communication about dangerous procedures, even when the truth offered little comfort to patients facing life-threatening situations. You examine the uterine rupture more carefully now that the baby has been delivered. The tear extends approximately 3 inches along the lower segment of the organ, involving both muscle and the inner lining, but not penetrating completely through to the abdominal cavity. This partial rupture, while serious, might be repairable using suturing techniques adapted from wound care developed for treating battle injuries. Roman surgical instruments were crude but effective for basic procedures. Your bronze needles, designed for closing skin lacerations, could potentially repair internal tissue if used with sufficient skill and care. Silk thread, imported at great expense from distant provinces, provided the strongest available suture material for holding tissues together under stress. The challenge lay in accessing the damaged area and placing sutures accurately while working inside a confined space by flickering lamplight. Hold the light steady and don't let anyone move. You instruct the attending women as you begin the most technically demanding procedure of your career. Internal uterine repair required visualization, manual dexterity, and precise suture placement that pushed ancient surgical techniques beyond their normal applications. One mistake could worsen the rupture and guarantee fatal hemorrhage within minutes. You work methodically to clean the torn edges of uterine tissue, removing blood clots and debris that could interfere with proper healing. Roman medical knowledge emphasized the importance of wound cleanliness, though the underlying reasons weren't understood. Wine, applied liberally to the surgical site, provided the best available antiseptic despite its limited effectiveness against bacterial contamination. The first sutures proved the most challenging, requiring you to work largely by touch while placing silk thread through tissue that's difficult to visualize clearly. Roman surgical training, such as it was, emphasized the development of tactile sensitivity that allowed practitioners to see with their fingers when visual access was limited. Years of obstetric work had honed these skills, though never in circumstances as demanding as internal uterine repair. Each stitch must be placed with mathematical precision. Too loose, and the tissue won't hold under pressure. Too tight, and the sutures will tear through damaged muscle fibers. The silk thread, precious enough to represent a significant investment, provides the strongest available material for holding tissues together, though its effectiveness depends entirely on proper placement and adequate blood supply to the repair site. The bleeding is slowing. You announce with cautious optimism as your sutures begin to achieve hemostasis. The uterine muscle responds well to repair, contracting around the silk thread in ways that help compress bleeding vessels. Roman medical knowledge recognized that some tissues healed better than others, though the physiological reasons remained mysterious to ancient practitioners. The procedure continues for nearly an hour as you place additional sutures to reinforce the initial repair. Roman surgical practice emphasized thorough reinforcement of critical repairs, understanding that failure often meant death in an era without effective treatment for post-surgical complications. Each additional stitch reduces the chances of dehiscence, rupture of the repair. That could prove rapidly fatal. As you complete the final sutures, the patient shows encouraging signs of stability. Her pulse, initially rapid and weak from blood loss, has strengthened and slowed toward normal ranges. Her skin color improves as adequate circulation is restored. Most importantly, the surgical site shows no evidence of continued bleeding, suggesting that the repair is holding under normal physiological pressures. "I think we've been successful," you tell the anxious family members who have waited tensely throughout the procedure. The bleeding has stopped and the repair appears secure, but she'll need complete rest for at least a month to allow proper healing. Roman post-surgical care emphasized immobilization and gradual return to normal activity, principles that remain valid despite limited understanding of the underlying healing processes. The centurion's wife grips your hand weakly but gratefully. "You saved my life," she whispers. "How can we ever repay you?" Her survival represents a triumph of ancient surgical technique over seemingly impossible odds, though you understand that luck played as large a role as skill in achieving a favorable outcome. Many similar cases ended in tragedy despite identical treatment. Roman medical practice included few procedures as technically demanding as internal uterine repair, making your success a remarkable achievement even by contemporary standards. The combination of diagnostic accuracy, surgical skill, and favorable circumstances required for success made such operations exceptional events that enhanced practitioner reputations throughout their careers. As dawn approaches, you clean your instruments and prepare to leave another household where your skills have meant the difference between life and death. The centurion presses a substantial payment into your hands, gold coins, that reflect both gratitude and the military appreciation for competence under pressure. Such fees allow you to continue serving patients who can't afford professional care. The cycle of birth, death, and miraculous survival continues, as it has throughout human history. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new opportunities to practice the ancient art of midwifery, new chances to witness the fundamental miracle of life emerging successfully from the dangerous passage between worlds. Your reputation grows with each successful case, but so does your humility before the ultimate mysteries of existence that no human skill can completely master. Roman midwifery, practiced at the intersection of medical knowledge and divine intervention, represents humanity's eternal struggle to preserve life in the face of biological realities that kill as often as they create. Your profession embodies this struggle, requiring technical competence, emotional resilience, and the acceptance that, despite your best efforts, some battles against death cannot be won, while others succeed through combinations of skill, luck, and forces beyond human understanding. As the first light of dawn breaks over Rome's 7 hills, you finally return to your modest home in the Subura, your leather bag lighter now after a day that tested every aspect of your training and experience. 3 women brought safely through the dangerous passage of childbirth, 3 infants successfully delivered into the harsh but wondrous world of the Roman Empire, 3 families spared the grief that too often accompanies the ancient lottery of birth and survival. Your hands, permanently stained by blood and herbal preparations, ache from the precise work of suturing torn tissue and guiding reluctant babies through narrow passages between life and death. Your back protests from hours spent crouched over birthing stools and makeshift surgical sites, maintaining the positions necessary for the delicate manipulations that separate successful midwifery from tragic failure. But exhaustion cannot diminish the profound satisfaction that comes from practicing humanity's oldest profession, the sacred art of helping life emerge safely from the mysterious realm of the womb into the bright, dangerous, magnificent world where survival depends on skill, luck, and the countless small miracles that allow fragile humans to thrive despite overwhelming odds against them. Roman society, for all its engineering marvels and military conquests, remained utterly dependent on the ancient biological process that brings new citizens into existence one dangerous birth at a time. Your profession, though practiced by women of modest social standing, proved essential to the empire's continuation, more important than senators' debates, generals' strategies, or emperors' grand designs, because without successful childbirth, none of those other achievements would matter for future generations. Tomorrow will bring new calls for assistance, new challenges that require every technique you've mastered, new opportunities to witness the fundamental miracle that transforms potential life into actual existence through processes that remain mysterious despite centuries of accumulated knowledge. The cycle continues, as it has throughout human history, as it will long after Rome's marble monuments crumble into dust and its proud eagles are forgotten. The ancient art of midwifery endures because it addresses humanity's most basic need, the successful reproduction that ensures species survival despite the countless hazards that threaten individual lives. Your skills, developed through apprenticeship, and refined through experience with hundreds of births, represent knowledge accumulated through generations of women who learned to guide life safely through its most dangerous transition. In your modest dwelling, you clean your instruments one final time and prepare for whatever rest the day might allow before the next emergency summons interrupts your sleep. The bronze hooks and silk sutures that saved 3 lives today will be ready tomorrow for new challenges, new opportunities to practice the sacred craft that makes civilization itself possible through the simple but miraculous act of bringing children safely into the world, one difficult birth at a time.